In man's life, his time is a mere instant, his existence a flux, his perception fogged, his whole bodily composition rotting, his mind a whirligig, his fortune unpredictable, his fame unclear. To put it shortly, all things of the body stream away like a river. All things of the mind are dreams and delusion. Life is warfare and a visit in a strange land. The only lasting fame is oblivion. What then can escort us on our way? One thing, and one thing only: philosophy. This consists in keeping the divinity within us inviolate and free from harm, master of pleasure and pain, doing nothing without aim, truth, or integrity, and independent of others' action or failure to act. Further, accepting all that happens and is allotted to it as coming from that other source, which is its own origin, and at all times awaiting death with the glad confidence that it is nothing more than the dissolution of the elements of which every living creature is composed. Now, if there is nothing fearful for the elements themselves in their constant changing of each into another, why should one look anxiously in prospect at the change and dissolution of them all? This is in accordance with nature, and nothing harmful is in accordance with nature. Do not waste the remaining part of your life in thoughts about other people when you are not thinking with reference to some aspect of the common good. Why deprive yourself of the time for some other task? I mean, thinking about what so-and-so is doing and why, what he is saying or contemplating or plotting, and all that line of thought makes you stray from the close watch on your own directing mind. No, in the sequence of your thoughts, you must avoid all that is casual or aimless, and most particularly anything prying or malicious. Train yourself to think only those thoughts, such that in answer to the sudden question, "What is in your mind now?" you could say with immediate frankness, whatever it is, this or that. And so your answer can give direct evidence that all your thoughts are straightforward and kindly, the thoughts of a social being who has no regard for the fancies of pleasure or wider indulgence, for rivalry, malice, suspicion, or anything else that one would blush to admit was in one's mind. A man such as this, if he postpones no longer his ready place among the best, is in some way a priest and minister of the gods. He responds to the divinity seated within him, and this renders the man unsullied by pleasures, unscathed by any pain, untouched by any wrong, unconscious of any wickedness. A wrestler for the greatest prize of all, to avoid being thrown by any passion, dyed to the core with justice, embracing with his whole heart all the experience allotted to him, rarely and only when there is great need for the common good, wondering what others may be saying or doing or thinking. He has only his own work to bring to fulfillment, and only his own fated allocation from the whole to claim his constant attention. As for his work, he makes it excellent. As for his lot, he is convinced it is good. And each person's appointed lot is both his fellow passenger and his driver. He bears in mind, too, the kinship of all rational beings, and that caring for all men is in accordance with man's nature. But that nevertheless he should not hold to the opinions of all, but only of those who live their lives in agreement with nature. He will constantly remind himself what sort of people they are who do not lead such lives, what they are like both at home and abroad, by night and by day, they and the polluting company they keep. So he disregards even the praise of such men. These are people who are not even satisfied with themselves. You should take no action unwillingly, selfishly, uncritically, or with conflicting motives. Do not dress up your thoughts in smart finery. Do not be a gabbler or a meddler. Further, let the God that is within you be the champion of the being you are, a male, mature in years, a statesman, a Roman, a ruler, one who has taken his post like a soldier waiting for the retreat from life to sound, and ready to depart, past the need for any loyal oath or human witness. And see that you keep a cheerful demeanor and retain your independence of outside help and the peace which others can give. Your duty is to stand straight, not held straight. One addition to the precepts already mentioned: always make a definition or sketch of what presents itself to your mind, so you can see it stripped bare to its essential nature and identify it clearly, in whole and in all its parts, and can tell yourself its proper name, and the names of those elements of which it is compounded and into which it will be dissolved. Nothing is so conducive to greatness of mind as the ability to subject each element of our experience in life to methodical and truthful examination, always at the same time using this scrutiny as a means to reflect on the nature of the universe, the contribution any given action or event makes to that nature, the value this has for the whole, and the value it has for man. And man is an inhabitant of this highest city, of which all other cities are mere households. Ask then, what is this which is now making its impression on me? What is it composed of? How long in the nature of things will it last? What virtue is needed to meet it? Gentleness, for example, or courage, truthfulness, loyalty, simplicity, self-sufficiency, and so on. So in each case we must say, this has come from God, this is due to a juncture of fate, the mesh of destiny, or some similar coincidence of chance. And this is from my fellow man, my kinsman and colleague, though one who does not know what accords with his own nature. But I do know, and so I treat him kindly and fairly, following the natural law of our fellowship. But at the same time, I aim to give him his proper desert in matters which are morally neutral. Men seek retreats for themselves, in the country, by the sea, in the hills, and you yourself are particularly prone to this yearning. But all this is quite unphilosophic when it is open to you, at any time you want, to retreat into yourself. No retreat offers someone more quiet and relaxation than that into his own mind, especially if he can dip into thoughts there which put him at immediate and complete ease. And by ease, I simply mean a well-ordered life. So constantly give yourself this retreat and renew yourself. The doctrines you will visit there should be few and fundamental, sufficient at one meeting to wash away all your pain and send you back free of resentment at what you must rejoin. And what is it you will resent? Human wickedness? Recall the conclusion that rational creatures are born for each other's sake, that tolerance is a part of justice, that wrongdoing is not deliberate. Consider the number of people who spent their lives in enmity, suspicion, hatred, outright war, and were then laid out for burial or reduced to ashes. Stop then. Or will you fret at your allocation from the whole? Revisit the alternatives, providence or atoms, and the many indications that the universe is a kind of community. But will matters of the flesh still have their hold on you? Consider that the mind, once it has abstracted itself and come to know its own defining power, has no contact with the movement of the bodily spirit, be that smooth or troubled, and finally remember all that you have heard and agreed about pain and pleasure. Well then, will a little fame distract you? Look at the speed of universal oblivion, the gulf of immeasurable time both before and after, the vacuity of applause, the indiscriminate fickleness of your apparent supporters, the tiny room in which all this is confined. The whole earth is a mere point in space. What a minute cranny within this is your own habitation, and how many and what sort will sing your praises here. Finally then, remember this retreat into your own little territory within yourself. Above all, no agonies, no tensions. Be your own master and look at things as a man, as a human being, as a citizen, as a mortal creature. And here are two of the most immediately useful thoughts you will dip into. First, that things cannot touch the mind. They are external and inert. Anxieties can only come from your internal judgment. Second, that all these things you see will change almost as you look at them, and then will be no more. Constantly bring to mind all that you yourself have already seen change. The universe is changed. Life is judgment. Remove the judgment, and you have removed the thought, I am hurt. Remove the thought, I am hurt, and the hurt itself is removed. What ease of mind you gain from not looking at what your neighbor has said or done or thought, but only at your own actions, to make them just, reverential, imbued with good. So do not glance at the black characters either side, but run right onto the line, straight, not straggly. Everything in any way beautiful has its beauty of itself, inherent and self-sufficient. Praise is no part of it. At any rate, praise does not make anything better or worse. This applies even to the popular conception of beauty, as in material things or works or art. So does the truly beautiful need anything beyond itself? No more than law, no more than truth, no more than kindness or integrity. Which of these things derives its beauty from praise or withers under criticism? Does an emerald lose its quality if it is not praised? And what of gold, ivory, purple, a lyre, a dagger, a flower, a bush? You have seen that. Now look at this. Do not trouble yourself. Keep yourself simple. Someone does wrong. He does wrong to himself. Has something happened to you? Fine. All that happens has been fated by the whole from the beginning and spun for your own destiny. In sum, life is short. Make your gain from the present moment with right reason and justice. Keep sober and relaxed. Love the art which you have learned and take comfort in it. Go through the remainder of your life in sincere commitment of all your being to the gods, and never making yourself tyrant or slave to any man. Harm to you cannot subsist in another's directing mind, nor indeed in any turn or change of circumstance. Where then? In that part of you which judges harm. So no such judgment, and all is well. Even if what is closest to it, your own body, is subjected to knife or cautery, or left to suppurate or mortify, even so that faculty in you which judges these things should stay untroubled. That is, it should assess nothing either bad or good, which can happen equally to the bad man or the good. Because what can happen to a man irrespective of his life's conformity to nature is not of itself either in accordance with nature or contrary to it. Change. Nothing inherently bad in the process, nothing inherently good in the result. Be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm, and round it the seething waters are laid to rest. It is my bad luck that this has happened to me. No, you should rather say, it is my good luck that, although this has happened to me, I can bear it without pain, neither crushed by the present nor fearful of the future. Because such a thing could have happened to any man, but not every man could have borne it without pain. So why see more misfortune in the event than good fortune in your ability to bear it? Or in general, would you call anything a misfortune for a man which is not a deviation from man's nature? Or anything a deviation from man's nature which is not contrary to the purpose of his nature? Well then, you have learnt what that purpose is. Can there be anything then in this happening which prevents you being just, high-minded, self-controlled, intelligent, judicious, truthful, honorable, and free? Or any other of those attributes whose combination is the fulfillment of man's proper nature? So in all future events which might induce sadness, remember to call on this principle. This is no misfortune, but to bear it true to yourself is good fortune. Always run on the short road, and nature's road is short. Go then for the healthiest in all you say and do. Such a purpose releases a man from the labors of service, from all need to manage or impress. At break of day, when you are reluctant to get up, have this thought ready to mind. I am getting up for a man's work. Do I still then resent it if I am going out to do what I was born for, the purpose for which I was brought into the world? Or was I created to wrap myself in blankets and keep warm? But this is more pleasant. Were you then born for pleasure, all for feeling, not for action? Can you not see plants, birds, ants, spiders, bees all doing their own work, each helping in their own way to order the world? And then you do not want to do the work of a human being. You do not hurry to the demands of your own nature. But one needs rest too. One does indeed, I agree. But nature has set limits to this too, just as it has to eating and drinking. And yet you go beyond these limits, beyond what you need. Not in your actions though, not any longer. Here you stay below your capability. The point is that you do not love yourself. Otherwise you would love both your own nature and her purpose for you. Other men love their own pursuit and absorb themselves in its performance to the exclusion of bath and food. But you have less regard for your own nature than the smith has for his metalwork, the dancer for his dancing, the money grubber for his money, the exhibitionist for his little moment of fame. Yet these people, when impassioned, give up food and sleep for the promotion of their pursuits. And you think social action less important, less worthy of effort? They cannot admire you for intellect. Granted, but there are many other qualities of which you cannot say, but that is not the way I am made. So display those virtues which are wholly in your own power. Integrity, dignity, hard work, self-denial, contentment, frugality, kindness, independence, simplicity, discretion, magnanimity. Do you not see how many virtues you can already display without any excuse of lack of talent or aptitude? And yet you are still content to lag behind. Or does the fact that you have no inborn talent oblige you to grumble, to scrimp, to toady, to blame your poor body, to suck up, to brag, to have your mind in such turmoil? No, by heaven it does not. You could have got rid of all this long ago, and only be charged, if charge there is, with being rather slow and dull of comprehension. And yet even this can be worked on, unless you ignore or welcome your stupidity. Realities are wrapped in such a veil, as it were, that several philosophers of distinction have thought them altogether beyond comprehension, while even the Stoics think them hard to comprehend. And every assent we may give to our perceptions is fallible. The infallible man does not exist. Pass then to the very objects of our experience. How short-lived they are, how shoddy, a catamite, a whore, a thief could own them. Go on now to the characters of your fellows. It is hard to tolerate even the best of them, not to speak of one's difficulty in enduring even oneself. In all this murk and dirt, in all this flux of being, time, movement, things moved, I cannot begin to see what on earth there is to value or even to aim for. Rather the opposite, one should console oneself with the anticipation of natural release, not impatient of its delay, but taking comfort in just these two thoughts. One, that nothing will happen to me which is not in accordance with the nature of the whole. The other, that it is in my control to do nothing contrary to my God and the divinity within me. No one can force me to this offense. To what use, then, am I now putting my soul? Ask yourself this question on every occasion. Examine yourself. What do I now have in this part of me called the directing mind? What sort of soul do I have after all? Is it that of a child? A boy? A woman? A despot? A beast of the field? A wild animal? I am made up of the causal and the material. Neither of these will disappear into nothing, just as neither came to be out of nothing. So every part of me will be assigned its changed place in some part of the universe, and that will change again into another part of the universe, and so on to infinity. A similar sequence of change brought me into existence, and my parents before me, and so back in another infinity of regression. Nothing forbids this assertion, even if the universe is subject to the completion of cycles. If you are doing your proper duty, let it not matter to you whether you are cold or warm, whether you are sleepy or well slept, whether men speak badly or well of you, even whether you are on the point of death or doing something else. Because even this, the act in which we die, is one of the acts of life. And so here too, it suffices to make the best move you can. The directing mind is that which wakes itself, adapts itself, makes itself of whatever nature it wishes, and makes all that happens to it appear in the way it wants. When circumstances force you to some sort of distress, quickly return to yourself. Do not stay out of rhythm for longer than you must. You will master the harmony the more by constantly going back to it. How good it is, when you have roast meat or such like foods before you, to impress on your mind that this is the dead body of a fish, this the dead body of a bird or pig, and again that the Falernian wine is the mere juice of grapes, and your purple-edged robe simply the hair of a sheep soaked in shellfish blood, and in sexual intercourse that it is no more than the friction of a membrane and a spurt of mucus ejected. How good these perceptions are at getting to the heart of the real thing and penetrating through it, so you can see it for what it is. This should be your practice throughout all your life. When things have such a plausible appearance, show them naked, see their shoddiness, strip away their own boastful account of themselves. Vanity is the greatest seducer of reason. When you are most convinced that your work is important, that is when you are most under its spell. See, for example, what Crate says even about Xenocrates. Some things are hurrying to come into being, others are hurrying to be gone, and part of that which is being born is already extinguished. Flows and changes are constantly renewing the world, just as the ceaseless passage of time makes eternity ever young. In this river, then, where there can be no foothold, what should anyone prize of all that races past him? It is as if he were to begin to fancy one of the little sparrows that fly past, but already it is gone from his sight. Indeed, this is the nature of our very lives, as transient as the exhalation of vapor from the blood or a breath drawn from the air. No different from a single breath taken in and returned to the air, something which we do every moment. No different is the giving back of your whole power of breathing, acquired at your birth just yesterday or thereabouts, to that world from which you first drew it. Do not imagine that if something is hard for you to achieve, it is therefore impossible for any man, but rather consider anything that is humanly possible and appropriate to lie within your own reach too. If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. I seek the truth which never harmed anyone. The harm is to persist in one's own self-deception and ignorance. Since you have reason and they do not, treat dumb animals and generally all things and objects with generosity and decency. Treat men, because they do have reason, with social concern, and in all things call on the gods. And do not let it matter to you for how long you will be alive in this work. Even 3 hours spent thus are sufficient. Disgraceful if, in this life where your body does not fail, your soul should fail you first. Sober up. Recall yourself. Shake off sleep once more. Realize they were mere dreams that troubled you. And now that you are awake again, look on these things as you would have looked on a dream. He who sees the present has seen all things, both all that has come to pass from everlasting and all that will be for eternity. All things are related and the same. Fit yourself for the matters which have fallen to your lot, and love these people among whom destiny has cast you. But your love must be genuine. Think constantly of all the sorts of men, of various professions, and of all the nations on earth who have died, and so bring your thought down to Philistion, Phoebus, and Organian. Pass now to the other classes of men. We too are bound to change our abode to that other world, where there are so many skilled orators, so many distinguished philosophers, Heraclitus, Pythagoras, Socrates, so many heroes of old, so many later commanders and kings. Add Eudoxus, Hipparchus, Archimedes. Add other men of penetrating intellect, men of great vision, men dedicated to their work. Add rogues, bigots, and even satirists of this transient mortal life, like Menippus and his kind. Reflect of all of these that they are long dead and buried. So is this anything terrible for them, or indeed for men whose very names are lost? In this world, there is only one thing of value: to live out your life in truth and justice, tolerant of those who are neither true nor just. Try to persuade them, but act even if they are unpersuaded, whenever the principle of justice so directs. But if someone forcibly resists, change tack to an unheard acceptance, so using the obstacle to bring forth a different virtue. And remember that you set out on a conditional course. You were not aiming at the impossible. So what were you aiming at? An impulse qualified by a condition. This you have achieved. What we propose to ourselves has been accomplished. Accustom yourself not to be disregarding of what someone else has to say. As far as possible, enter into the mind of the speaker. No one will prevent you living in accordance with the principle of your own nature. Nothing will happen to you contrary to the principle of universal nature. This is wickedness. This is what you have often seen, and you should have this thought ready to hand against any eventuality. I have seen this often before. Generally, wherever you look, you will find the same things. The histories, ancient, more recent, and modern, are full of them. Cities and households are full of them today. There is nothing new. All is familiar and all short-lived. Do not be ashamed of help. It is your task to achieve your assigned duty, like a soldier in a scaling party. What then, if you are lame and cannot climb the parapet by yourself? but this is made possible by another's help. Whatever anyone does or says, I must be a good man. It is as if an emerald or gold or purple were always saying, whatever anyone does or says, I must be an emerald and keep my own color. Happiness is a benign God or divine blessing. Why then, my imagination, are you doing what you do? Go away in the God's name, the way you came. I have no need of you. You have come in your old habit. I am not angry with you. Only go away. It is human nature to love even those who trip and fall. This follows if you reflect at the time that all men are brothers, that they go wrong through ignorance, not intent, that in a short while both you and they will be dead, and above all, that the man has not harmed you. He has not made your directing mind worse than it was before. A deep scowl on the face is contrary to nature, and when it becomes habitual, expressiveness begins to die, or is even finally extinguished beyond rekindling. Try to attend to this very point, that this is something against reason. In the field of moral behavior, if even the consciousness of doing wrong is lost, what reason is there left for living? Do not dream of possession of what you do not have. Rather, reflect on the greatest blessings in what you do have, and on their account remind yourself how much they would have been missed if they were not there. But at the same time, you must be careful not to let your pleasure in them habituate you to dependency, to avoid distress if they are sometimes absent. Withdraw into yourself. It is in the nature of the rational directing mind to be self-content with acting rightly and the calm it thereby enjoys. On pain. Unbearable pain carries us off. Chronic pain can be borne. The mind preserves its own serenity by withdrawal, and the directing reason is not impaired by pain. It is for the parts injured by the pain to protest if they can. On fame. Look at their minds, the nature of their thought and what they seek or avoid, and see how, just as drifting sands constantly overlay the previous sand, so in our lives what we once did is very quickly covered over by subsequent layers. Do not look around at the directing minds of other people, but keep looking straight ahead to where nature is leading you, both universal nature in what happens to you in your own nature, in what you must do yourself. Every creature must do what follows from its own constitution. The rest of creation is constituted to serve rational beings, just as in everything else the lower exists for the higher. But rational beings are here to serve each other. So the main principle in man's constitution is the social. The second is resistance to the promptings of the flesh. It is the specific property of rational and intelligent activity to isolate itself and never be influenced by the activity of the senses or impulses. Both these are of the animal order, and it is the aim of intelligent activity to be sovereign over them and never yield them the mastery, and rightly so, as it is the very nature of intelligence to put all these things to its own use. The third element in a rational constitution is a judgment unhurried and undeceived. So let your directing mind hold fast to these principles and follow the straight road ahead. Then it has what belongs to it. In every contingency, keep in your mind's eye those who had the same experience before and reacted with vexation, disbelief, or complaint. So where are they now? Nowhere. Well then, do you want to act like them? Why not leave the moods and shifts of others to the shifting and the shifted, and for yourself concentrate wholly on how to make use of these contingencies? You will then use them well, and they will be raw material in your hands. Only take care and seek your own best good in all that you do. Remember these two things. The action is important, the context indifferent. All the time you should consider who are these people whose endorsement you wish, and what are the minds that direct them. When you look into the sources of their judgment and impulse, you will not blame their unwitting error, nor will you feel the need of their endorsement. No soul, says Plato, likes to be robbed of truth, and the same holds of justice, moderation, kindness, and all such virtues. Essential that you should keep this constantly in your mind. This will make you more gentle to all. The way nature has blended you into the compound whole does not prevent you drawing a boundary around yourself and keeping what is your own in your own control. Always remember this. Remember too that the happy life depends on very little. And do not think just because you have given up hope of becoming a philosopher or a scientist, you should therefore despair of a free spirit, integrity, social conscience, obedience to God. It is wholly possible to become a divine man without anybody's recognition. It is ridiculous not to escape from one's own vices, which is possible, while trying to escape the vices of others, which is impossible. Whatever the rational and social faculty finds neither intelligent nor to the common good, it judges, with good reason, beneath itself. Ask yourself this about each action. How does this sit with me? Shall I regret it? In a short while I am dead and all things are gone. What more do I want if this present work is that of an intelligent and social being, sharing one law with God? First, do not be upset. All things follow the nature of the whole, and in a little while you will be no one and nowhere, as is true now even of Hadrian and Augustus. Next, concentrate on the matter in hand and see it for what it is. Remind yourself of your duty to be a good man and rehearse what man's nature demands. Then do it straight and unswerving, or say what you best think right. Always, though, in kindness, integrity, and sincerity. Every living organism is fulfilled when it follows the right path for its own nature. For a rational nature, the right path is to withhold assent to anything false or obscure in the impressions made on its mind, to direct its impulses solely to social action, to reserve its desires and aversions to what lies in our power, and to welcome all that is assigned to it by universal nature. Because it is a part of universal nature, just as the nature of the leaf is part of the plant's nature, except that in the case of the leaf, its nature partakes of a nature which lacks perception or reason and is liable to impediment. Whereas man's nature is part of a nature which is unimpeded, intelligent, and just, in that to each creature it gives fair and appropriate allocations of duration, substance, cause, activity, and experience. But do not look to find a one-to-one correspondence in every case, but rather an overall equivalence, the totality of this to the aggregate of that. Let nobody anymore hear you blaming palace life. Don't hear yourself blaming it. When you are reluctant to get up from your sleep, remind yourself that it is your constitution and man's nature to perform social acts, whereas sleep is something you share with dumb animals. Now, what accords with the nature of each being is thereby the more closely related to it, the more in its essence, and indeed the more to its liking. Constantly test your mental impressions, each one individually if you can. Investigate the cause, identify the emotion, apply the analysis of logic. Whenever you meet someone, ask yourself first this immediate question: what beliefs does this person hold about the good and bad in life? Because if he believes this or that about pleasure and pain and their constituents, about fame and obscurity, death and life, then I shall not find it surprising or strange if he acts in this or that way, and I shall remember that he has no choice but to act as he does. Remember that to change course or accept correction leaves you just as free as you were. The action is your own, driven by your own impulse and judgment, indeed your own intelligence. Everything has come into being for a purpose. A horse, say, a vine. Does this surprise you? Even the sun will say, I came into being for a purpose. Likewise, the other gods. For what purpose, then, were you created? For your pleasure? Just see whether this idea can be entertained. Concentrate on the subject or the act in question, on principle or meaning. You deserve what you're going through. You would rather become good tomorrow than be good today. Man's joy is to do man's proper work, and work proper to man is benevolence to his own kind, disdain for the stirrings of the senses, diagnosis of the impressions he can trust, contemplation of universal nature, and all things thereby entailed. Erase the impressions on your mind by constantly saying to yourself, it is in my power now to keep this soul of mine free from any vice or passion or any other disturbance at all. But seeing all things for what they are, I can treat them on their merits. Remember this power which nature gives you. The court of Augustus, wife, daughter, grandson, stepson, sister, Agrippa, relatives, household, friends, Arius, Maecenas, doctors, diviners, an entire court dead. Go on now to other cases where it is not the death of just one individual, but of a whole family like the Pompeys. And there is the inscription you see on tombstones, the last of his line. Just think of all the anxiety of previous generations to leave behind an heir. And then one has to be the last. Here again, the death of a whole family. You must compose your life action by action and be satisfied if each action achieves its own end as best can be. And no one can prevent you from that achievement. But there will be some external obstacle. No obstacle, though, to justice, self-control, and reason. But perhaps some other source of action will be obstructed. Well, gladly accept the obstruction as it is. Make a judicious change to meet the given circumstance, and another action will immediately substitute and fit into the composition of your life as discussed. If you have ever seen a severed hand or foot, or a head cut off and lying some way away from the rest of the body, analogous is what someone does to himself, as far as he can, when he will not accept his lot and severs himself from society or does some unsocial act. Suppose you have made yourself an outcast from the unity of nature. You were born a part of it, but now you have cut yourself off. Yet here lies the paradox, that it is open to you to rejoin that unity. No other part has this privilege from God, to come together again once it has been separated and cut away. Just consider the grace of God's favor to man. He has put it in man's power not to be broken off from the whole in the first place, and also, if he is broken off, to return and grow back again, resuming his role as a member. Do not let the panorama of your life oppress you. Do not dwell on all the various troubles which may have occurred in the past or may occur in the future. Just ask yourself in each instance of the present, what is there in this work which I cannot endure or support? You will be ashamed to make any such confession. Then remind yourself that it is neither the future nor the past which weighs on you, but always the present. And the present burden reduces, if only you can isolate it and accuse your mind of weakness if it cannot hold against something thus stripped bare. In the constitution of the rational being, I can see no virtue that counters justice, but I do see the counter to pleasure, self-control. Nothing can happen to any human being outside the experience which is natural to humans. An ox too experiences nothing foreign to the nature of oxen, a vine nothing foreign to the nature of vines, a stone nothing outside the property of a stone. So if each thing experiences what is usual and natural for it, why should you complain? Universal nature has brought you nothing you can't endure. Remember that your directing mind becomes invincible when it withdraws into its own self-sufficiency, not doing anything it does not wish to do, even if its position is unreasonable. How much more then, when the judgment it forms is reasoned and deliberate? That is why a mind free from passions is a fortress. People have no stronger place of retreat, and someone taking refuge here is then impregnable. Anyone who has not seen this is short of wisdom. Anyone who has seen it and does not take refuge is short of fortune. Do not elaborate to yourself beyond what your initial impressions report. You have been told that so-and-so is maligning you. That is the report. You have not been told that you are harmed. I see that my little boy is ill. That is what I see. I do not see that he is in danger. So always stay like this within your first impressions and do not add conclusions from your own thoughts. And then that is all. Or rather, you can add the conclusion of one acquainted with all that happens in the world. A bitter cucumber? Throw it away. Brambles in the path? Go round them. That is all you need without going on to ask, so why are these things in the world anyway? That question would be laughable to a student of nature, just as any carpenter or cobbler would laugh at you if you objected to the sight of shavings or offcuts from their work on the shop floor. Yet they have somewhere to throw their rubbish, whereas the nature of the whole has nothing outside itself. The marvel of its craft is that it sets its own confines and recycles into itself all within them, which seems to be decaying, growing old, or losing its use, and then creates afresh from this same material. This way it requires no substance other than its own, and has no need for a rubbish dump. So it is complete in its own space, its own material, and its own craftsmanship. Do not be dilatory in action, muddled in communication, or vague in thought. Don't let your mind settle into depression or elation. Allow some leisure in your life. They kill, they cut in pieces, they hunt with curses. What relevance has this to keeping your mind pure, sane, sober, just? As if a man were to come up to a spring of clear, sweet water and curse it, it would still continue to bubble up water good to drink. He could throw in mud or dung. In no time, the spring will break it down, wash it away, and take no color from it. How then can you secure an everlasting spring and not a cistern? By keeping yourself at all times intent on freedom and staying kind, simple, and decent. Injustice is sin. When universal nature has constituted rational creatures for the sake of each other, to benefit one another as deserved, but never to harm, anyone contravening her will is clearly guilty of sin against the oldest of the gods, because universal nature is the nature of ultimate reality, to which all present existence is related. Lying, too, is a sin against the same goddess. Her name is Truth, and she is the original cause of all that is true. The conscious liar sins to the extent that his deceit causes injustice. The unconscious liar to the extent that he is out of tune with the nature of the whole and out of order with the nature of the ordered universe against which he fights. And it is fighting when he allows himself to be carried in opposition to the truth. He has received the prompts from nature. By ignoring them, he is now incapable of distinguishing false from true. Moreover, the pursuit of pleasure as a good and the avoidance of pain as an evil constitutes sin. Someone like that must inevitably and frequently blame universal nature for unfair distribution as between bad men and good, since bad men are often deep in pleasures and the possessions which make for pleasure, while the good often meet with pain and the circumstances which cause pain. Further, anyone who fears pain will also at times be afraid of some future event in the world, and that is immediate sin. And a man who pursues pleasure will not hold back from injustice, an obvious sin. Those who wish to follow nature and share her mind must themselves be indifferent to those pairs of opposites to which universal nature is indifferent. She would not create these opposites if she were not indifferent either way. So anyone who is not himself indifferent to pain and pleasure, death and life, fame and obscurity, things which universal nature treats indifferently, is clearly committing a sin. By universal nature treating these things indifferently, I mean that they happen impartially by cause and effect to all that comes into being and owes its being to the fulfillment of an original impulse of providence. Under this impulse, providence set out from a first premise to establish the present order of the universe. She had conceived certain principles of what was to be and determined generative powers to create substances, transformations, and successive regeneration. The sinner sins against himself. The wrongdoer wrongs himself by making himself morally bad. Work. Don't work as a miserable drudge or in any expectation of pity or admiration. One aim only, action or inaction as civic cause demands. Good or ill for the rational social being lies not in feeling but in action, just as also his own virtue or vice shows not in what he feels, but in what he does. Just as you yourself are a complementary part of a social system, so too your every action should complement a life of social principle. If any action of yours, then, does not have direct or indirect relation to the social end, it pulls your life apart and destroys its unity. It is a kind of sedition, like an individual in a democracy unilaterally resigning from the common harmony. The recurrent cycles of the universe are the same, up and down, from eternity to eternity, and either the mind of the whole has a specific impulse for each individual case. If so, you should welcome the result. Or it had a single original impulse, from which all else follows in consequence. And why should you be anxious about that? The whole is either a god, then all is well, or if purposeless, some sort of random arrangement of atoms or molecules. You should not be without purpose yourself. In a moment the earth will cover us all. Then the earth too will change. and then further successive changes to infinity. One reflecting on these waves of change and transformation, and the speed of their flow will hold all mortal things in contempt. The universal cause is a torrent, sweeping everything in its stream. So man, what does that mean for you? Do what nature requires at this moment. Start straight away if that is in your power. Don't look over your shoulder to see if people will know. Don't hope for Plato's utopian republic, but be content with the smallest step forward and regard even that result as no mean achievement. How worthless are these little men in the public eye who think their actions have anything to do with philosophy? They are full of snot, and who will change their views? Without a change of view, what alternative is there to slavery? Men groaning and going through the motions of compliance? Go on then, talk to me now of Alexander and Philip and Demetrius of Phalerum. I shall follow them if they saw the will of universal nature and took themselves to her school. But if they simply strutted a dramatic role, no one has condemned me to imitate them. The work of philosophy is simple and modest. Do not seduce me to pompous pride. Take a view from above. Look at the thousands of flocks and herds, the thousands of human ceremonies, every sort of voyage in storm or calm, the range of creation, combination, and extinction. Consider, too, the lives once lived by others long before you, the lives that will be lived after you, the lives lived now among foreign tribes. And how many have never even heard your name? How many will very soon forget it? How many may praise you now, but quickly turn to blame? Reflect that neither memory nor fame, nor anything else at all, has any importance worth thinking of. Enough of this miserable way of life, enough of grumbling and aping. Why are you troubled? What is new in this? What is it that drives you mad? The cause? Then face it, or rather, the material. Then face that. Apart from cause and material, there is nothing. But you should even now, late though it is, see to your relation to the gods also. Make yourself simpler and better. 3 years is as good as 100 in this quest. Epicurus says, "In my illness, my conversations were not about the sufferings of my poor body, and I did not prattle on to my visitors in this vein. But I continued to discuss the cardinal principles of natural philosophy, with particular reference to this very point, how the mind shares in such disturbances of the flesh, while still preserving its calm and pursuing its own good." He goes on, "I did not allow the doctors either to preen themselves on any great achievement, but my life continued fine and proper. An example, then, for you in sickness, if you are sick, and in any other circumstance. All schools agree that you should not abandon philosophy in any eventualities of life, nor join the ignorant chatter of the uneducated layman. Concentrate only on the work of the moment and the instrument you use for its doing. Whenever you are offended at someone's lack of shame, you should immediately ask yourself, so is it possible for there to be no shameless people in the world? It is not possible. Do not then ask for the impossible. This person is just one of the shameless inevitably existing in the world. Have the same thought ready for the rogue, the traitor, every sort of offender. The recognition that this class of people must necessarily exist will immediately make you kinder to them as individuals. Another useful thought of direct application is the particular virtue nature has given us to counter a particular wrong. Gentleness is given as the antidote to cruelty and other qualities to meet other offenses. In general, you can always re-educate one who has lost his way, and anyone who does wrong has missed his proper aim and gone astray. And what harm have you suffered? You will find that none of these who excite your anger has done anything capable of affecting your mind for the worse. And it is only in your mind that damage or harm can be done to you. They have no other existence. Anyway, where is the harm or surprise in the ignorant behaving as the ignorant do? Think about it. Should you not rather blame yourself for not anticipating that this man would make this error? Your reason gave you the resource to reckon this mistake likely from this man, yet you forgot and are now surprised that he went wrong. Above all, when you complain of disloyalty or ingratitude, turn inwards on yourself. The fault is clearly your own. If you trusted that a man of that character would keep his trust, Or if you conferred a favor without making it an end in itself, your very action its own and complete reward. What more do you want, man, from a kind act? Is it not enough that you have done something consonant with your own nature? Do you now put a price on it? As if the eye demanded a return for seeing or the feet for walking. Just as these were made for a particular purpose and fulfill their proper nature by acting in accordance with their own constitution, so man was made to do good. And whenever he does something good or otherwise contributory to the common interest, he has done what he was designed for and inherits his own. Observe what your physical nature requires as one subject to the condition of mere life. Then do it and welcome it, as long as your nature as an animate being will not be impaired. Next, you should observe what your nature as an animate being requires. Again, adopt all of this, as long as your nature as a rational being will not be impaired. And rational directly implies social. Follow these rules and no further fuss. Whether atoms or a natural order, the first premise must be that I am part of the whole which is governed by nature. The second, that I have some close relationship with the other kindred parts. With these premises in mind, insofar as I am a part, I shall not resent anything assigned by the whole. Nothing which benefits the whole can be harmful to the part, and the whole contains nothing which is not to its benefit. All organic natures have this in common, but the nature of the universe has this additional attribute, that no external cause can force it to create anything harmful to itself. So remembering that I am part of a whole so constituted will leave me happy with all that happens to me. And insofar as I have some close relationship with the other kindred parts, I shall do nothing unsocial, but rather look to the good of my kin and have every impulse directed to the common benefit and diverted from its opposite. All this in operation guarantees that life will flow well, just as you would judge a citizen's life in proper flow when he moves on through acts which benefit his fellow citizens and welcomes all that his city assigns him. Claim your entitlement to these epithets: good, decent, truthful, in mind clear, cooperative, and independent. And take care then not to swap them for other names. And if you do forfeit these titles, return to them quickly. Remember too that clarity of mind was meant to signify for you discriminating attention to detail and vigorous thought. A cooperative mind, the willing acceptance of the dispensation of universal nature. Independence of mind, the elevation of your thinking faculty above the calm or troubled affections of the flesh, above paltry fame or death or any other indifferent thing. So if you keep yourself true to these titles, not just grubbing for this acclamation from others, you will be a new man and enter a new life. To continue the same man as you have been up to now, to be torn apart and defiled in this life you live, is just senseless self-preservation, like that of half-eaten gladiators who, mauled all over and covered in blood by the wild beasts, still plead to be kept alive for the next day, when in their same state they will meet again those same claws and teeth. Launch yourself then on these few claims. If you can stay within them, stay there like a man translated to some paradise, the islands of the blessed. But if you feel yourself falling away and losing control, retire in good heart to some corner where you will regain control, or else make a complete exit from life, not in anger, but simply, freely, with integrity, making this leaving of it at least one achievement in your life. A great help to keeping these claims to virtue fresh in your mind will be to keep your mind on the gods, remembering that what they want is not servile flattery, but the development of all rational beings into their own image. They want the fig tree to do the proper work of a fig tree, the dog of a dog, the bee of a bee, and man the proper work of man. Adopt a systematic study of the way all things change into one another. Pay constant attention to this aspect of nature and train yourself in it. Nothing is so conducive to greatness of mind. One so trained has divested himself of his body, recognizing that in almost no time he will have to leave all this behind and depart from the world of men. He has devoted his entire self to justice in his own actions and to the nature of the whole in all things external. He does not even give a thought to what others will say or suppose about him or do against him, but is content to meet these two conditions: his own integrity in each present action and glad acceptance of his present lot. He has abandoned all other preoccupations and ambitions, and his only desire is to walk the straight path according to law, and in so doing, to follow in the path of God. What need of prompt or hint when it is open to yourself to discern what needs to be done? And if you can see your way, to follow it with kind but undeviating intent. If you cannot see the way, hold back and consult your best advisors. If some other factors obstruct this advice, proceed on your present resources, but with cautious deliberation, keeping always to what seems just. Justice is the best aim, as any failure is in fact a failure of justice. A man following reason in all things combines relaxation with initiative, spark with composure. As soon as you wake from sleep, ask yourself, will it make any difference to you if others criticize what is in fact just and true? No, it will not. You have surely not forgotten what these people who whinny in praise or blame of others are like in their bed and at their board, the sort of things they do and avoid or pursue. They're cheating and stealing, not with hands and feet, but with the most precious part of themselves, the part where, if allowed, there grows trust, decency, truth, law, the spirit of goodness. No more roundabout discussion of what makes a good man. Be one. What is my directing mind to me? What am I turning it into now? What use am I making of it? Is it drained of intelligence? Is it divorced and broken off from society? Is it so interfused and welded to the flesh that it sways with its tides? Picture everyone voicing pain or discontent at anything, as like a pig at a sacrifice, kicking and squealing. Just the same as the man who keeps it to himself, silently resentful on his bed. Think of all the threads that bind us, and how only rational creatures are given the choice of submitting willingly to events. Pure submission is forced on all. Whenever you take offense at the wrong done by another, move on at once to consider what similar wrong you are committing. It could be setting value on money or pleasure or reputation and so on through the categories. This reflection will quickly damp your anger, aided by the further thought that the man is acting under compulsion. What else can he do? Or if you can, remove the cause of his compulsion. Let no one have the chance to accuse you, with any truth, of not being sincere or a good man. Make sure that anyone taking this view of you is a liar. This is wholly up to you. Who is there to prevent you being good and sincere? You must just decide to live no longer if you won't have these qualities. And reason too abandons the man who won't. The healthy eye must look at all there is to be seen and not say, I only want pale colors. This is a symptom of disease. The healthy ear and nose must be ready for all sounds or smells. And the healthy stomach must accept all food in the same way that a mill accepts all it was made to grind. And so the healthy mind too must be ready for all eventualities. The mind which says my children must live, or there must be popular acclaim for all I do, is the eye demanding pale or the teeth demanding pap. No one is so fortunate as not to have standing around his deathbed some people who welcome the fate coming on him. Was he the earnest sage? Then maybe there will be someone at his final moment saying to himself, we can breathe again now, rid of this schoolmaster. He was not hard on any one of us, but I could feel his silent criticism of us all. So much for the earnest sage, but in our own case, how many other reasons are there for a general wish to be rid of us? You will think of this when you are dying, and your departure will be the easier if you reason to yourself. I am leaving the sort of life in which even my colleagues, on whose behalf I have expended so much effort, prayer, and thought, even they want me out of the way, doubtless hoping for some relief from my death. So why should anyone cling to a longer stay here on earth? Do not, though, for that reason feel any less warmth for them as you depart this life, but keep true to your own character, friendly, kind, generous. Again, your leaving of them should not be any wrench from life, but rather that easy slipping of the soul from the body's carapace experienced by those dying at peace. Nature bound you to them and made them your colleagues, but is now releasing you. My release is like parting from kinsmen, but I do not resist or need to be forced. This too is one of the ways to follow nature. As far as you can, get into the habit of asking yourself in relation to any action taken by another. What is his point of reference here? But begin with yourself. Examine yourself first. Remember that what pulls the strings is that part of us hidden inside. That is the power to act. That is the principle of life. That one could say is the man himself. So never give any equal thought to the vessel which contains it or the organs built round it. These are an instrument like an axe, differing only in their attachment to the body. There is no more use in these parts without the agency which starts or stops them than in the shuttle without the weaver, the pen without the writer, the whip without the driver. Have I done something for the common good? Then I too have benefited. Have this thought always ready to hand and no stopping. A branch cut from its neighboring branch is necessarily cut away from the whole tree. In the same way, a human being severed from just one other human has dropped from the whole community. Now the branch is cut off by someone else, but a man separates himself from his neighbor by his own hatred or rejection, not realizing that he has thereby severed himself from the wider society of fellow citizens. Only there is this gift we have from Zeus, who brought together the human community. We can grow back again to our neighbor and resume our place in the complement of the whole. Too often repeated, though, such separation makes it harder to unite and restore the divided part. In sum, the branch which stays with the tree from the beginning of its growth and shares its transpiration is not the same as the branch which is cut off and then regrafted, whatever the gardeners say. Share their stock, but not their doctrines. Just as those who try to block your progress along the straight path of reason will not be able to divert you from principled action, so you must not let them knock you out of your goodwill towards them. Rather, you should watch yourself equally on both fronts, keeping not only a stability of judgment and action, but also a mild response to those who try to stop you or are otherwise disaffected. To be angry with them is no less a weakness than to abandon your course of action and capitulate in panic. Both amount equally to desertion of duty, either being frightened into retreat or setting yourself at odds with your natural kinsmen and friends. The external things whose pursuit or avoidance troubles you do not force themselves on you, but in a way you yourself go out to them. However that may be, keep your judgment of them calm, and they too will stay still. Then you will not be seen either to pursue or to avoid. Someone despises me, that is his concern, but I will see to it that I am not found guilty of any word or action deserving contempt. Will he hate me? That is his concern, but I will be kind and well-intentioned to all, and ready to show this very person what he is failing to see, not in any criticism or display of tolerance, but with genuine goodwill, like the famous Phocion, if that is, he was not speaking ironically. This should be the quality of our inner thoughts, which are open to the God's eyes. They should see a man not disposed to any complaint and free of self-pity. And what harm can you suffer if you yourself at this present moment are acting in kind with your own nature and accepting what suits the present purpose of universal nature? A man at full stretch for the achievement, this way or that, of the common good. Live through life in the best way you can. The power to do so is in a man's own soul if he is indifferent to things indifferent. And he will be indifferent if he looks at these things both as a whole and analyzed into their parts, and remembers that none of them imposes a judgment of itself or forces itself on us. The things themselves are inert. It is we who procreate judgments about them and, as it were, imprint them on our minds. But there is no need for imprinting at all, and any accidental print can immediately be erased. Remember too that our attention to these things can only last a little while, and then life will be at an end. And what, anyway, is the difficulty in them? If they are in accord with nature, welcome them, and you will find them easy. If they are contrary to nature, look for what accords with your own nature, and go straight for that, even if it brings you no glory. Anyone can be forgiven for seeking his own proper good. There are 4 particular corruptions of the directing mind for which you must keep constant watch, and eliminate them whenever you detect them, in each case applying one of these formulas. This mental image is superfluous. This could weaken the bond of community. This would not be yourself speaking. To say what you do not feel should be regarded as the height of contradiction. And the fourth case for self-reproach is that in which the more divine part of you loses the contest and bows to the lower, mortal part, the body and its gross pleasures. The man without one and the same aim in life cannot himself stay one and the same throughout his life. The maxim is incomplete unless you add what sort of aim that should be. Judgments vary of the whole range of various things taken by the majority to be goods in one way or another, but only one category commands a universal judgment, and that is the good of the community. It follows that the aim we should set ourselves is a social aim, the benefit of our fellow citizens. A man directing all his own impulses to this end will be consistent in all his actions, and therefore the same man throughout. At their festivals, the Spartans would put seats for visitors in the shade and sit themselves wherever they could. In writing and reading, you must learn before you can teach, yet more so in life. Socrates used to question thus: what do you want to have? The souls of rational or irrational beings? Rational. What sort of rational beings? The pure or the lower? The pure. Why then don't you aim for that? Because we have it. Why then you're fighting and disagreements? All that you pray to reach at some point in the circuit of your life can be yours now, if you are generous to yourself. That is, if you leave all the past behind, entrust the future to providence, and direct the present solely to reverence and justice. To reverence so that you come to love your given lot. It was nature that brought it to you and you to it. To justice so that you are open and direct in word and action, speaking the truth, observing law and proportion in all you do. You should let nothing stand in your way, not the iniquity of others, not what anyone else thinks or says, still less any sensation of this poor flesh that has accreted round you. The afflicted part must see to its own concern. If then, when you finally come close to your exit, you have left all else behind and value only your directing mind and the divinity within you. If your fear is not that you will cease to live, but that you never started a life in accordance with nature, then you will be a man worthy of the universe that gave you birth. You will no longer be a stranger in your own country, no longer meet the day's events as if bemused by the unexpected, no longer hang on this or that. There are three things in your composition: body, breath, and mind. The first two are yours to the extent that you must take care for them, but only the third is in the full sense your own. So if you separate from yourself, that is, from your mind, all that others say or do, all that you yourself have said or done, all that troubles you for the future, all that your encasing body and associate breath bring on you without your choice, all that is whirled round in the external vortex encircling us, so that your power of mind, transcending now all contingent ties, can exist on its own, pure and liberated, doing what is just, willing what happens to it, and saying what is true. If, as I say, you separate from this directing mind of yours the baggage of passion, time future and time past, and make yourself like Empedocles' perfect round, rejoicing in the solitude it enjoys, and seek only to perfect this life you are living in the present, you will be able at least to live out the time remaining before your death calmly, kindly, and at peace with the God inside you. I have often wondered how it is that everyone loves himself more than anyone else, but rates his own judgment of himself below that of others. Anyway, if a god or some wise tutor appeared at his side and told him to entertain no internal thought or intention which he won't immediately broadcast outside, he would not tolerate this regime for a single day. So it is that we have more respect for what our neighbors will think of us than we have for ourselves. Practice even what you have despaired of mastering. For lack of practice, the left hand is awkward for most tasks, but has a stronger grip on the bridle than the right. It is practiced in this. The model for the application of your principles is the boxer rather than the gladiator. The gladiator puts down or takes up the sword he uses, but the boxer always has his hands and needs only to clench them into fists. If it is not right, don't do it. If it is not true, don't say it. 3 thoughts to keep at hand. First, in your own actions, nothing aimless or other than justice herself would have done. In external happenings, either chance or providence is at work, and one should not blame chance or indict providence. Second, the nature of each of us from conception to the first breath of soul, and from that first breath to the surrender of our soul. What elements form our constitution and will be the result of our dissolution? Third, that if you were suddenly lifted up to a great height and could look down on human activity and see all its variety, you would despise it, because your view would take in also the great surrounding host of spirits who populate the air and the sky. And that however many times you were lifted up, you would see the same things, monotony and transience. Such are the objects of our conceit. When you fret at any circumstance, you have forgotten a number of things. You have forgotten that all comes about in accordance with the nature of the whole, that any wrong done lies with the other. Further, that everything which happens was always so in the past, will be the same again in the future, and is happening now across the world. That a human being has close kinship with the whole human race, not a bond of blood or seed, but a community of mind. And you have forgotten this too, that every man's mind is God and has flowed from that source. That nothing is our own property, but even our child, our body, our very soul have come from that source. That all is as thinking makes it so. That each of us lives only the present moment, and the present moment is all we lose. The salvation of life lies in seeing each object in its essence and its entirety, discerning both the material and the causal, in applying one's whole soul to doing right and speaking the truth. There remains only the enjoyment of living a linked succession of good deeds, with not the slightest gap between them. What a tiny part of the boundless abyss of time has been allotted to each of us, and this is soon vanished in eternity. What a tiny part of the universal substance in the universal soul. How tiny in the whole earth the mere clod on which you creep. Reflecting on all this, think nothing important other than active pursuit where your own nature leads, and passive acceptance of what universal nature brings. Mortal man, you have lived as a citizen in this great city. What matter if that life is 5 or 50 years? The laws of the city apply equally to all. So what is there to fear in your dismissal from the city? This is no tyrant or corrupt judge who dismisses you, but the very same nature that brought you in. It is like the officer who engaged a comic actor dismissing him from the stage. But I have not played my 5 acts, only 3. True, but in life 3 acts can be the whole play. Completion is determined by that being who caused first your composition and now your dissolution. You have no part in either causation. Go then in peace. The God who lets you go is at peace with you.